You know this town doesn't need another piece of black trash, right? That's what the sheriff said, right before he stepped on a photograph of the man's dead sister, and laughed. No judge, no jury, just fists, boots, and blood on hot asphalt. But what they didn't know was that the man they just beat and left for dead in the woods was a former Green Beret, a sniper trained to eliminate targets from nearly a mile away, a ghost who had once fought for this country and was now about to fight for something bigger. They thought they were throwing away a homeless black man. What they really did was awaken the wrong soldier. What state are you watching this from? And in your state, if a war hero becomes a ghost, is it justice that dies next? Welcome to Mr. 7 Stories. If you believe truth has a pulse, like, subscribe, and follow for more true hidden stories about what happens when power is abused and someone finally fights back. Let's follow the rise of Gabriel Knox, the man they tried to erase, but who became the one thing they feared most, a living reckoning. The July sun in Crescent State cut like a blade. It seared the cracked asphalt surrounding the abandoned Red Star-marked gas station, where the unseen souls of Arlington Hollow wandered in search of a scrap of leftover bread or a sliver shade to breathe. Amid it all, a tall, lean black man crouched silently beside the sun-bleached wall of the gas station, digging through a rusted trash bin, his hair flecked with gray, his coat torn and caked in roadside dust. His calloused hand sifted through the garbage with the cold patience of a man disarming a landmine. His name was Gabriel Knox, 38 years old, homeless, forgotten. But just a few years ago, those same hands gripped an M24 rifle, eyes fixed through a scope in a war zone. Green Beret, sniper, America's silent executioner. But today, he was nothing more than a shadow to a society that no longer looked his way. A sound broke the silence, the low snarl of a diesel engine. Heat dragged across the pavement as the vehicle rumbled to a stop. Gabriel didn't need to look. His ears had long been trained to the cadence of danger. The tires halted exactly 22 yards behind him. A door clicked open. Then heavy footsteps. Familiar ones. Too familiar. Another damn piece of trash digging through sacred ground. A deep southern drawl echoed, followed by low, mean-spirited chuckling. 3 officers stepped out. Leading them was Sheriff Roy Voss, tall, bald, with a Ruger dangling at his hip and a face as cold as forged steel. He was the iron hand behind Mayor Warren Coyle's Clean the Filth initiative, a policy aimed squarely at the black, the homeless, and the broken veterans. 2 more men followed, Deputy Rayburn Hicks and a fresh recruit. All wore the Arlington Hollow Police Department uniform, but there was no justice in their eyes, only threat. Gabriel rose slowly. He was taller than Roy, wiry but solid, like old wood. His gaze met Roy's behind the sheriff's glasses. Blank, steady, just passing through, Gabriel said, voice rough like rolling stone. Didn't take anything. Y'all always say that. Roy sneered, stepping closer. No home, no address, no damn standing. You know this town doesn't need another piece of black trash, right? No one laughed. They didn't need to. Roy flicked his hand. A punch to the gut, then a jab to the face. Hicks slammed Gabriel against the wall, his cheeks scraping chipped paint and brick. The smell of blood mixed with gasoline. What the hell is this? Hicks yelled, yanking a plastic bag from Gabriel's hand. Inside, a half-squashed sandwich and a creased photograph. In the photo, his sister and niece beamed in the sun, their smiles faded by time. His sister, Maya, dead in a hit-and-run no one ever investigated. His niece, Imani, a high school student, bright, strong, and Gabriel's last living tether to hope. Roy grinned and stepped on the photo. He ground it under his boot. "This your mama?" he asked. "Or just some street whore?" And that's when the blood began to boil. It wasn't the insult that made his blood boil. It was the way they looked at him, like an easy target. A lone, homeless man, a ghost with no name, no memory. They didn't know that Gabriel Knox had once been a sniper in the 75th Ranger Regiment, a man who could hold his breath for 43 seconds to drop a target from 900 yards away. "I think he's hiding drugs," Hicks said, pulling a small bag from inside his jacket. "Found it." "Excellent." Roy nodded. "Evidence recovered at the scene. Cuff him. Charge him with resisting arrest if he flinches." Gabriel didn't resist, but they beat him anyway. 3 minutes. Each punch a declaration. "You're not human." Then came the cuffs. Then the shove into the cruiser. Blood smeared the car door as Roy leaned down. "You're gonna wish you died in the war." They thought he was done, but they didn't know. Gabriel didn't die in the war. He came back from hell and brought a sniper's eyes with him. The Arlington Hollow police cruiser rolled off the main road, heading north, into a place with no streetlights, no witnesses, just pine trees and darkness thick as wet stone. 5 miles outside the city, they stopped in a clearing deep in the woods. "Nice and quiet," Hicks sneered. "No one hear the crying out here." They dragged Gabriel Knox from the vehicle like a corpse, slamming his face into the dirt. Wind sliced through the trees, but he heard nothing, only Roy's face above him, shadowed behind sunglasses, smiling with menace. They beat him, not for justice, but for amusement. A kick to the ribs, a baton strike to the neck. Blood pooled around his eye, but Gabriel stayed silent. They didn't notice the one thing they hadn't taken. A thin blade of steel sewn into the hem of his coat, bound tight with military-grade thread. A keepsake from his final deployment in Afghanistan. A small tool, but survival doesn't always need more. His moment came when the rookie Boyd stepped too close, crouching to yank Gabriel's head up and spin his face. Gabriel sprang, like a coiled spring. He knocked Boyd's hand away, twisted left, and drove his elbow hard into the rookie's neck. Boyd collapsed, choking. At the same instant, Gabriel twisted his wrist. The blade slipped from his sleeve. Click, the handcuffs popped open. Hicks shouted, but didn't draw fast enough. Gabriel struck, a brutal hook to the temple. Hicks went down. Gabriel snatched the sidearm from Hicks' holster. He didn't fire. He ran into the woods like a wounded hyena that hadn't died yet. Gunfire echoed behind him. A bullet grazed his left shoulder. Still he ran, through roots, over puddles, across slick stone, without a sound. The night swallowed him whole, the scent of blood and cold earth thick in the air. But Gabriel was alive, and now he was awake. 2 days later, at an abandoned warehouse in the East Side Industrial District, an explosion ripped through the night. Police arrived to find the scene scorched and shattered. Wooden crates filled with signal jamming equipment, internal documents, and hundreds of unregistered bags of narcotics, all burned to ash. On the scorched black concrete wall, only one message remained, scrawled in charcoal. "I'm no longer a soldier, but I still know how to fight. Gee." That same night, Sergeant Hicks, one of the 3 men who had beaten Gabriel, was ambushed as he left the bar on Glenrock Street. A sharp object punctured his tire. When he bent down to check, a blow from behind knocked him out cold. He awoke in a junkyard, head bleeding, wrist bound with nylon cord. Pinned to his chest was a note. This was a warning. Next time, there won't be one. Gee. Gabriel Knox was no longer just a fugitive. He had become a ghost in the trees, a guerrilla soldier in the heart of a decaying city. He lived in the shadows, in abandoned sewer tunnels, in rusted drainage pipes, in the forgotten edges of pine forest. Every scrap of metal, every frayed wire, every empty gas, he became a weapon in the hands of a trained fighter. The next morning, inside Arlington Hollow Police HQ, Sheriff Roy Voss slammed the table, his eyes bloodshot. "We let that piece of trash slip through, and now he's a damn legend." Gabriel Knox, once a nameless nobody, had declared the opening move, and he swore this time he wouldn't stop, not until Arlington Hollow paid the price. 1 week after the warehouse explosion, the people of Arlington Hollow woke to blaring emergency alerts flooding local radio. WAVX 103.7, normally a country music station, had replaced its morning playlist with a chilling broadcast. Red level security alert. A dangerous extremist named Gabriel Knox is destabilizing our community. On screen, A crudely edited image of Gabriel's face, imposed over a burning background, with bold red text, "Domestic Terrorist." On Channel 6, Mayor Warren Coyle appeared live from the steps of City Hall, solemn-faced, hand gripping the mic. This is no longer just a disgruntled homeless man. This is a domestic terrorist, a former military sniper using tactical knowledge to spread fear. Dressed in a charcoal gray suit and silver-rimmed glasses, Coyle delivered his words with rehearsed resolve, each phrase sculpted like a campaign speech. But behind that polished facade was a media war scripted like a political play. Within 48 hours, hashtags like #GoSniper and #BlackExtremist flooded local social media. Dozens of doctored clips surfaced. Security cam footage stitched with blurry edits, grainy jump cuts, and no sourcing, showing a man, allegedly Gabriel, firing weapons, planting explosives, threatening women and children. The videos spread like wildfire. No one verified. No one questioned. He is the embodiment of hate, screamed a Fox affiliate reporter, standing in front of the scorched warehouse ruins. Coyle didn't stop at media manipulation. He issued Executive Order 14B, authorizing the deployment of paramilitary civilian units to protect public safety. Suddenly, men in camo fatigues, baseball caps embroidered with the Sons of Patriot Flame emblem, stood on street corners, shotguns at their sides, telling children, "Don't worry, son, we're here to protect you from the black terrorists." Sheriff Roy Voss, still smarting from the botched capture of Gabriel, seized a moment for revenge. At a special press conference, he announced, "We are launching Operation Safe Ground. The enemy is inside our city. He is dangerous and may be receiving funding from foreign extremist groups." A colossal lie, told with absolute confidence, and so the people believed it. They needed someone to blame, and Gabriel was perfect. Poor, black, military background, now living beyond the law. Meanwhile, deep in the red pine forest, Gabriel silently tuned a battered radio he'd taken from an old guard post. The signal crackled, but it was clear enough to catch Mayor Coyle's voice on the television broadcast. Gabriel sat motionless, not angry, not afraid, just a sharp, steady pain. The kind only a man who once died for his country could feel, now branded a monster by the same people he once protected. On a rotting plank of wood, he carved each line with a folding knife. "No one is born to be hunted, but if you turn me into a beast, I will bite." Gabriel looked toward the skyline, where the city lights flickered like fever through the night. He knew the battle was no longer in the forest. It had spread across the city, and he would not run. 3 days after Mayor Warren Coyle's media blitz, Arlington Hollow seemed brainwashed. From market bulletin boards to mid-program commercial breaks, everywhere displayed the same blaring slogan in bold red: "Gabriel Knox, enemy of justice." But within the frenzy of propaganda, Gabriel struck back, not with bullets or bombs, but with the one weapon Coyle never thought he could wield: the truth. In an abandoned cabin beneath red pine, buried underground, Gabriel sat before a homemade control rig, wired together with circuit boards, solar batteries, and a repurposed military radio. Beside him, a battered Dell Latitude, a relic from his time in Afghanistan, recovered from a police evidence depot during a recent raid. On screen, an audio file, a recording from a hidden infrared mic Gabriel had planted on one of Coyle's inner circle, Deputy Rayburn Hicks, during a meeting with militiamen at a farm 12 miles out near Lowridge. "The dope moves south. Patriot Flames boys will cover the route." Coyle's approved it. Split stays 70/30ths. Same as always. Gabriel gripped the mouse. His eyes were ice. That night, at exactly 11:17 p.m., the FM broadcast in Arlington Hollow glitched. Country music on WVX 103.7 was abruptly cut off. Then came a voice, low, steady, unmistakably military. "My name is Gabriel Knox. They call me a terrorist, but I call them traitors. Here is proof that Mayor Warren Coyle is in league with a drug trafficking network, and that he ordered the campaign to frame me." Then came the tape, raw, unedited, Voice is clear. Names unmistakable. And at the end, Gabriel landed his final blow. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm demanding justice. Within 30 minutes, hashtag Coil Cartel surged into the top 5 trending hashtags across the state. Independent news outlets started asking real questions. Why hasn't anyone verified the source of the anti-Gabriel clips? Who's really behind the Sons of Patriot Flame? As Gabriel monitored radio feedback from his makeshift broadcast system, a short beep cut through the static, a military-encoded signal, recognizable only to former special ops personnel. On screen, a message appeared. K, 214 reporting. Old eyes are still watching. Now in motion. Gabriel narrowed his eyes. K214? There was only one person who ever used that code, Natalie Vance. His former intelligence commander in Kandahar, officially declared missing after a Black Ops mission. That same night, a new leaked file appeared on the state governor's internal network. It accused Mayor Coyle of diverting counterterrorism funds to arm his private militia with backing from a federal-level official. No one knew who sent it, but the digital signature at the bottom contained a single word: Ghost. At City Hall, Coyle slammed his fist against the table. Find him. I don't care if you have to tear this town apart. I want his head on the morning news. But Gabriel had already moved ahead. He didn't need people to love him. He just needed them to know the truth. And for the first time since the beatings and the lies, the media narrative had begun to shift. The skies over Arlington Hollow were gray and heavy, black clouds gathering like omens of a storm. But this storm wasn't born of nature. It came from human hands, namely Mayor Warren Coyle's. For days after the broadcast of the damning recording between Rayburn Hicks, Roy Voss, and the Sons of Patriot Flame, the political and public pressure on the mayor's office hung like a steel weight above the city. Questions swirled about the drug network, the armed civilian force, and the manipulation of government agencies. But instead of retreating, Coyle chose the darkest path possible. He went after Gabriel Knox's blood. On Monday morning, Imani Ray, Gabriel's 16-year-old niece, his only remaining family, vanished from Arlington High School. Security footage showed the black SUV with no plate stopping at the school gate. Imani was pulled inside in seconds. No one reacted in time. No one could stop it. At that moment, deep in the pine forest, inside a crumbling old cabin, Gabriel Knox sat silently, eyes locked on the screen of his battered laptop. He was connected to a backdoor server only one person could maintain: Veronica Kane, a former city communications engineer. Veronica had once worked for the local government until she live-streamed footage of Red Rock police officers beating students during the 2020 protests. She lost everything after that: her job, her faith, even her place in the daylight. Since then, she'd become a ghost on the wire, anonymous, invisible, but never blind. Gabriel had first met Veronica during a break-in at the abandoned Eldridge Hill broadcast station. He'd planned to hijack the signal. But instead of confrontation, there was conversation. Two people, exiled by system control, bound by a common enemy, Warren Coyle. Today, their shared screen displayed a newly leaked clip from an anonymous account. Imani Ray, Gabriel's only living family, was tied to a chair in a dark warehouse. Her face was swollen and bruised, blood dripping from her lip. Her eyes, wide open, didn't blink as a masked figure behind her spoke through a distorted voice modulator. Gabriel Knox. Want to play the hero? Then your niece will be the mirror of your failure, hour by hour, minute by minute. A slap cracked through the air, striking Imani's cheek. Her head turned with the blow, but she didn't cry. She stared straight into the camera, not with fear, but with defiance, and that look alone made viewers shudder. The video was uploaded to an independent blog, watchthewatchman.org, and taken down within minutes. But it had already spread. Within 3 hours, outrage ignited. Students at Crescent State University, children's rights advocacy groups, and the underground social network scene exploded with the hashtag Justice for Imani. Mainstream media tried to stay quiet, but the fire was already burning. and it was creeping fast. That evening, in the dim red-lighted cabin lit by alarm systems, Veronica stood and placed a hand on Gabriel's shoulder. "He's not attacking your politics anymore," she said, voice calm but eyes blazing. "He's going for your heart." That night, the emergency broadcast rig was switched to combat mode. A new video file, recorded via infrared cam, was queued up by Gabriel. In it, his voice was low, steady, unwavering. "I'm not a perfect man, but Imani is a child, and everyone involved in hurting her will pay. This isn't a warning. It's a promise." At the same time, an anonymous whistleblower sent Channel 6 a packet of internal documents from Coyle's office, revealing how city funds had been secretly rerouted into shell accounts linked to warehouse properties suspected to be Imani's holding sites. The media front cracked. A few young journalists began speaking out, and some low-ranking officers, previously silent, started texting Gabriel's satellite phone anonymously. "Warehouse south of Laurel Avenue. Chemical smell. Green light. They're moving her tomorrow night." Gabriel unfolded the map. His face showed no emotion, only a deadly quiet. They picked the wrong girl, and the wrong man to cross. Cold wind sliced across the rusted metal roofs of the industrial ruins at the edge of Arlington Hollow. Inside one warehouse, in a dim room guarded by two militiamen, a flickering fluorescent bulb cast weak light over the battered face of Imani Ray, 17, bound to a steel chair. Dried blood clung to her mouth, but her eyes still burned. She didn't cry. She knew Uncle Gabriel was coming. Outside, cloaked in fog and darkness, Gabriel Knox observed through thermal optics from the rooftop of a neighboring building. Years of battlefield experience told him the least guarded access point was the side rear door. He'd waited 4 days for this moment, ever since Imani sent a coded Morse signal through a tampered security cam mic. Now he moved, silent, precise. He cut through a rusted section of chain-link fence with his knife and slipped inside. No rifle, just a Glock 19, a combat knife, and a homemade EMP post device. Every step measured, every breath controlled. He left no trace. When Gabriel breached the holding room, Imani had just opened her eyes. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time stood still. He cut the ropes binding her wrists. "Can you walk?" he whispered. Imani nodded, even as her legs trembled from hours of torment. Footsteps echoed nearby. The two guards were returning. Gabriel motioned for Imani to hide behind the door. As it swung open, he launched. A single punch dropped the first guard. The second was neutralized in 7 seconds. Quick and clean, Uncle and niece escaped through an old maintenance tunnel leading out to the rear parking lot. A small delivery truck waited there, its engine humming low, just enough to mask against acoustic sensors. What Gabriel didn't know was that, from a distance, a surveillance camera captured the whole scene. Him striking guards, pulling Imani along, edited later to look like an armed abduction. By morning, local and national broadcasts were ablaze with headlines. "Black terrorist kills guards, kidnaps teen girl." Sheriff Roy Voss appeared on live television, his arm around Imani's stepmother, an actress hired to play the grieving relative. She sobbed into the microphone. He's been brainwashing her for years. She doesn't know what's real anymore. That afternoon, the Liberty Encampment, a neighborhood of mostly homeless black residents, and where Gabriel once lived, erupted in flames. The media reported rioters destroyed district in support of Gabriel Knox. But the residents knew the truth. They saw the drones, dropping flares and accelerants onto rooftops. Gabriel and Imani watched from the basement of an abandoned house. Through a cracked window, they saw smoke billow from the skyline, heard the screams of elders and children, and the curses of people who once called him a hero. Imani gripped his hand tightly. "We need to show them the truth," she whispered through the haze. "Not just to save me, to save this whole city." Gabriel nodded. His eyes were no longer just a soldier's. They were the eyes of a man cornered, ready to forge justice from pain. The Arlington Hollow night sky was iron gray, wind roaring through pines. Like the distant cry of blood and fire, Gabriel Knox, his body bandaged and battered, but his eyes fearless, stood at the forest edge. Below, in the valley, Coyle's militia compound blazed under bright yellow floodlights, its perimeter lined with rows of rifles and armored trucks. This was a place where Imani had been held. It was also the main weapons cache for the far-right militia, the heart of Coyle's campaign of racial terror in Arlington Hollow. But Gabriel was not alone. 3 former soldiers who had served with him in Kandahar, men also betrayed by the system, had tracked him down and asked to join the fight. Now, they waited, silent, for a signal. They knew they might not survive the night, but if they didn't destroy this place, thousands more would burn like Liberty Encampment. We didn't come to survive. Gabriel said softly, gripping his modified M4. We came to end this. They infiltrated through the eastern fence, exploiting a blind spot in the thermal sensors, still down from last week's flood. The first guards dropped without a sound. No cries, no alarms. Gabriel led like a predator. Each step, each breath, an extension of the dark. At the center of the compound, they split into units. Gabriel moved toward the weapons depot, where shipping containers overflowed with ammunition, explosives, and automatic rifles. He planted C4 charges, setting a 5-minute timer. Then, a sound behind him. He spun, face to face with Boone Maddox, the commanding officer of the Sons of Patriot Flame. Boone said nothing. He lunged, a wild beast with a short combat blade in hand. The fight unfolded with no gunfire, only the clang of steel, the crunch of breaking bones, the labored breathing of 2 men trained to kill. Blood splashed across the concrete. Boone sliced deep along Gabriel's upper arm. But Gabriel wrapped his forearm around Boone's throat, yanked a smoke grenade pin, and dropped it. In the haze, Gabriel shifted to Boone's blind side, drove his combat knife into his gut. Over. Boone collapsed, blood pooling from his lips. Coyle won't spare you, he gasped. Gabriel retrieved his firearm, his voice low and cold as iron. Good. He should be worried. He tapped his radio. Alpha point secure. Pull out. The explosion tore through the night. A deafening roar as the entire depot erupted. The compound shook like an earthquake. Crates of ammo detonated in waves, igniting the weapon's yard into a sea of fire. Shards of steel pierced the sky, casting molten light over the Arlington Hollow night. From a distance, citizens watched the red glow, unaware of what they were witnessing. But Gabriel wasn't done. He raced to the detention wing, where Imani had once been tortured, and obliterated it with his final homemade shell. Amid flames and rubble, Gabriel stood on the roof of a guard shack. Sweat, blood, and ash smeared across his skin, but his gaze was locked, focused, unshaken, sharp as tempered steel. Meanwhile, inside Arlington Hollow City Hall, Mayor Warren Coyle slammed his fist on the table. His face burned red with rage. He destroyed the entire base. Kill my commander? That bastard wants a war. Then I'll show the world who the real monster is. He grabbed his phone, turned to his advisor. Deploy Spectre Unit. Push the fake narrative. Now. Begin the hunt. But Gabriel didn't yet know what looked like a final victory was merely the opening act of the next hell. The skies over Arlington Hollow turned ashen, not only from the smoke of a decimated militia base, but from something darker on the horizon. In the reinforced sublevels of City Hall, Warren Coyle sat before a bank of surveillance monitors. His expression, stone. His army was gone. His stockpile of millions in weapons, gone. Now, he was done hiding behind political masks. Activate Spectre Unit. Coyle ordered. Spectre Unit was not a militia. They were mercenaries. A brutal strike force, non-governmental, highly trained. Veterans of Syria, Sierra Leone, the Golden Triangle. They were funded by black budgets and commanded by men who had never heard the word conscience. Within 18 hours, they arrived in Arlington Hollow. At that moment, Gabriel and Imani were hiding in an abandoned mine shaft on the city's southern outskirts, a former terrain training site once used by special forces. He thought they might finally have time to rest. But when the helicopter sliced through the tree line at 3 a.m., that hope vanished. "Move. Now!" Gabriel barked, pulling Imani behind him, eyes sharp as drawn wire. Gunfire erupted moments later. Spectre didn't fight like cops or militia. They attacked like death-trained predators. No warnings, no hesitation. In 10 minutes, the entire mine complex was leveled by mortar shells and suppressive fire. Gabriel led Imani into a secondary tunnel, but a landmine detonated beneath them. He was thrown into the air, the world spinning into a haze of concussive thunder and choking dust. When he came to, his body was half buried in debris, his breath shallow, his ears ringing like sirens underwater. He was almost buried alive. Imani, was she safe? Did she escape? He didn't know. Blood trickled from his brow to his lips. The air stank of gunpowder, scorched rock, and death. In the stillness between life and oblivion, memories flickered, his mother's face, his sister's laughter before the crash, nameless corpses in Kandahar, souls long lost to the dirt. No, this was not how he would die. With every ounce of strength, Gabriel pried his left arm free from under a collapsed steel beam. The pain nearly blacked him out, but he kept pushing inch by inch. And then, light, a thin beam piercing the dust, wind brushing in through a crack in the rock. Gabriel Knox crawled from the earth, a warrior reborn from ash. Above, Spectre was sweeping the area. A commander in black tactical armor waved a hand, his voice cold and certain. No one survived that blast. Sweep for thermals anyway. But Gabriel was already gone, vanished from their sensors like a phantom. Huddled in a rocky crevice, he drew his combat knife from his boot. His voice was a whisper of war. If they want a war, I'll show them what war really means. At that same moment, Warren Coyle appeared on statewide television. "I am declaring martial law in Arlington Hollow to protect our citizens from the terrorist known as Gabriel Knox. He is a national threat." But even as those lies filled the airwaves, Gabriel, battered, bloody, was crawling back in the grave, not as a man running, but as one ready to leave a mark. He limped toward the Western Industrial District, where Veronica once mentioned a decommissioned broadcast station, through rusted pipelines and concrete drainage tunnels. He found the service hatch leading into the substructure. Inside, he began connecting his signal transceiver, a cobbled-together device powered by salvage tech and rage. Then, the low, dreadful sound of helicopter rotors. Spectre unit had found him. No one should have survived that blast. A Spectre commander growled. "And yet he's here." Artillery screamed overhead, slamming through the glass roof. The entire building roared, then collapsed, as if the earth itself had twisted. And this time, Gabriel couldn't move fast enough. A slab of concrete came crashing down. Everything went dark. Gabriel Knox had no idea how long he lay unconscious beneath the cold wreckage, beneath what remained of the broadcast station's roof, flattened by the Spectre unit barrage. His body felt crushed. A dislocated shoulder, shredded leg, blood soaking through cloth in dark, spreading blooms. But the will to survive, forged long ago in the battlefields of the Middle East, had not yet flickered out. A light rain began to fall outside the ruins. Each drop that slipped through the cracks in the broken concrete ceiling was like a war drum. Something was shifting. 6 miles away, inside a sealed room at the FBI's Atlanta field office, federal agents stared, stunned, at a stream of classified documents, just received through an anonymous back channel. A synthetic voice, deep and clear, played from the first video. "My name is Athena. I'm a former cybersecurity engineer who once worked on the city's internal network. I used to believe in justice until I saw the truth." On screen, doctored financial records, photographs of Warren Coyle shaking hands with leaders of far-right militias, audio from private calls between Coyle and the Spectre unit commander, ordering them to cleanse black neighborhoods and to brand Gabriel Knox a terrorist no matter the cost. An older FBI agent, hair graying, reading glasses slipping down his nose, muttered under his breath, "Jesus, this is a coup from the inside." Within minutes, a federal arrest warrant was issued. A tactical response team was deployed within 15 minutes. In downtown Arlington Hollow, as Warren Coyle stood on a stage giving a speech about restoring order, a fleet of black FBI SUVs swarmed the square. The crowd scattered in panic as agents stormed the platform, weapons drawn. "Warren Coyle, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy with paramilitary extremists, and orchestrating crimes against civilians." A lead agent shouted through a bullhorn. Coyle tried to hold his smile, but his eyes had already fractured. "You have no proof," he said, voice trembling. "We got a forest." The agent snapped, shoving him to the ground and cuffing him. As camera crews broadcast a moment live, at a field hospital on the city's edge, Imani Ray, her leg bandaged and dried blood still clinging to her skin, clutched the doctor's hand. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held hope. "Where's my uncle? Is he alive?" And then, sirens in the distance. A gurney rushed through the tent flaps, carrying a mud-caked, dust-covered figure. A young medic yelled, "We've got a pulse. He's still with us." Imani broke down, tears spilling freely. "He said he'd come back." She whispered, "He promised." Outside, the news cycle was relentless. Mayor Warren Coyle arrested. Whistleblower remains unidentified. Full-scale investigation into city systems underway. At the edge of darkness, the fire of justice sparked back to life, not from gunfire, but from a silent witness, someone invisible who dared to speak the truth a city tried to bury. That morning, Arlington Hollow saw no sunlight. Thick fog blanketed the streets, as if the city itself was exhaling through a wound still open on soot-streaked walls. Graffiti bled in red spray paint. Truth has surfaced. Justice will not be silenced. Ghost lives. Inside a temporary field hospital, Gabriel Knox opened his eyes after 3 days in a coma. His vision blurred, then slowly cleared. The first thing he saw was Imani Ray, curled asleep by his bedside, her wild curls tousled, her face scratched, her left leg braced in steel. A fresh bandage circled her knee, stained with dry blood. He couldn't sit up. He couldn't speak. But he reached out, his fingers gently brushing hers. Startled, she awoke, tears welling instantly as she locked eyes with him. "You're alive?" Gabriel nodded. Just once. A small motion, but it carried the weight of a war. News of Coyle's arrest spread nationwide. In a leaked video from federal holding, Coyle screamed at FBI agents as they led him into interrogation. "I was keeping order. I was cleansing this place of a monster." But no one listened anymore. Dozens of cities demanded investigations into paramilitary units. Hundreds of civil lawsuits were filed. Arlington Hollow, though scarred and burned, had become a symbol, not of victory, but of awakening, in the city square, where once Coyle's lies echoed through amplifiers. A temporary memorial now stood. It bore names: the wrongly executed homeless, families whose homes were torched, victims no one ever claimed. But below it, handwritten and taped in black duct tape, was a single line: "The nameless man stopped the bloodshed, but it's up to us to make sure it doesn't return." 3 weeks after being discharged, Gabriel Knox disappeared from the city. No one knew where he went. He left no goodbyes, only a letter tucked into Imani's coat pocket, alongside a dull folding knife. "Imani, you survived not to seek revenge, but to live differently. Don't become me. Don't let what was lost steal what still remains. I've been a soldier my whole life, but now you are the last hope of this old one." Gee. Imani held the letter to her chest. She didn't cry. She just stared out the window, toward the horizon where smoke still lingered in the Arlington Hollow wind. In a small town west of Crescent State, locals whispered about a tall black man with a limp, working at a rundown auto shop. Quiet, scarred hands, eyes like steel. One night, A drunk picked a fight with him and collapsed with just a look. Not a single punch thrown. No one knew his real name. They just called him Ghost. Gabriel Knox didn't fight to be a hero. He fought so no one else would have to walk alone, as he once did. He didn't win with a rifle, but with the endurance of what's right. And while no one knew the identity of the one who exposed Coyle, the silent hand behind it all, they knew this. Sometimes, change doesn't come from blinding light. It comes from those forced to live in the dark. Gabriel Knox wasn't a legend, and that's exactly why he became one.